Monster Hunter Wilds is so fun, and one of the best things about it is that it has so many weapons that all play very differently. So what if I mastered every weapon and rated them on a tier list? But how do I know whether I mastered a weapon? I decided to try to clear this Arkveld optional quest in less than 4 minutes. If a speedrunner can do it in 2, I should be able to do it in twice the time, right? And because I'm playing casually, I'll go without scripts or skills like ambush or heroics. Then I'll rank all the weapons based on how easy I found them. Let's see how it goes. So let's get started with one of my mains, which is the Gunlance, which is a little bit overpowered. So this is a wide Gunlance, which means in theory it should be played with small shelling combos like this. But this specific Gunlance is so overtuned that people play it full burst anyway. Normal Gunlances are supposed to have more shells, but in this case doesn't matter because each shell does so much stinking damage. And don't forget Wyvern Fire, which also does a lot of damage. There's this kind of weird interaction with the burst ability. Oh, and also one last thing for shelling, it doesn't even matter where you hit the monster. For most weapons, you want to target the weak spot that does the most damage. Shells, you can hit him anywhere. And finally, let's not forget this big ol' shield. This makes defense really, really easy because if you're uncertain, you can just hold the shield up and you won't get hits. You can perfect guard, and the timing is pretty generous, and reload at the same time, which is great. And because it just does so much damage, it was really, really easy to clear Arkveld well below 4 minutes for this one. It's busy. This is less, that's definitely less, okay, yeah, this is definitely less than 4 minutes. Big explosions, super satisfying, and because it's this specific Gunlance is so stinking overtuned, I'll give it an S rank. Alright, but what if I take the gun off? Then we have Lance, Gunlance's older cousin. Obviously, if we take the gun off, we get a simpler moveset that involves primarily poking. There's also more emphasis on counterattacks. It's a super simple weapon with high uptime and great defenses, but it doesn't quite seem to do as much damage. Well, then again, like nothing does as much damage as Gunlance. I felt like I wasn't really playing that badly when I tried the Lance runs. I was using all the combos that chat was telling me about, but somehow I just couldn't get it clear in under 4 minutes. Ah, please, no more Lance! Did I do it? Did I do it? No! Now I'm gonna talk about something that is gonna come up kind of a lot, which is the corrupted mantle. This thing. It's an insane mantle that increases your damage, and in particular, it buffs normal attacks, where it does another entire instance of damage. And it's so strong that it actually changes the combos of a lot of weapons. For Lance specifically, it benefits a lot from the mantle because the basic poke combo is buffed a lot. Look, this is a lot of damage. So, you know, Lance can obviously do more than just poke. It can charge, it can sweep, it can jump, it can counter. But with the mantle buffing your normal poke combo this much, you're not really gonna want to do anything else. And yeah, that's basically how I ended up clearing it. I just poked and poked and poked and poked as hard as I could. I didn't click any button but the left click because I am playing mouse and keyboard, and ended up clearing Arkveld fairly easily. Should be it. Should be it. Yippee! A rank, because I just mashed left click. Anyway, the corrupted mantle is a little bit scary, so let's see what other weapons it changes the combo of. In a lot of ways, the sword and shield is kinda similar to Lance. It's low commitment, it has fast attacks, combos, and a shield. It's pretty simple, not a lot of gauges or ammos or complicated things to think about. But the similarities pretty much end there. The shield is smaller, so you get more knockback when you guard things. The weapon is shorter, so you have to get in closer, but fortunately, the sword and shield is also much more mobile, so it's easier to get in. There are a lot of really different cool attacks that kind of flow into each other, like the Spinning Reaper and the Roundhouse Slash, and these charge attacks, they're really, really cool, but yeah, put them out of your head because Corrupted Mantle! With the Corrupted Mantle, your optimal damage rotation looks like this! Yeah, or like this. It's, yeah, not great. Fortunately, this mantle only lasts 2 minutes, so at least for the remainder of the hunts, you'll be able to do cool things, but for those 2 minutes, you'll be doing this combo. Either way, again, because the Corrupted Mantle buffs this weapon so much, it was relatively easy to clear Arkveld in under 4 minutes, so another A tier for the Sword and Shield. Ooh, that was so close, but barely. Okay, so what if you took away the shield from the Sword and Shield and replaced it with another sword? Sword and sword, dual blades. Theoretically, like, this should do more damage than the Sword and Shield because that's twice the number of weapons, yeah? But each attack does less damage. And I think that's where dual blades really shines. It's so cool and so stylish to play as the dual blades. Like, the focus attack is probably the coolest thing in the game. Maybe not the most efficient, but it sure looks freaking cool. So there's no shield, so the only defensive tool is your dodge. Luckily, you're incentivized to dodge a lot because dodging puts you in your fancy, I think it's called Archdemon mode, and the iframes are also pretty generous, so it's not too difficult either. So there's a few more things to keep in mind while you're playing dual blades versus sword and shields, because you do have to pay attention to your stamina because your demon mode drains stamina. And you also want to pay attention to your demon gauge, I think, to make sure that you're doing as much damage as you can and you're not hitting the wrong buttons. So while you're like spinning around and doing a zillion hits on Arkveld, I kinda had a problem, which was that even though I was hitting Arkveld a lot, each of those individual hits, they weren't really doing that much damage. At least that's how I felt. So, it took me a couple of tries. But I don't think I made it, dude. God. I wasn't even close. I started with the paralysis dual blades because I figured the crowd control might help. But it turns out that the dual blades is actually pretty good at chasing down Arkveld and keeping high uptime even when it's running around the map. So I swapped to the burst dual blades and managed to clear it that way. Oh, I barely hit it. That was close. That's good. It definitely took a couple of tries, so I'm gonna give it a B tier. For some reason, I found it a lot harder than the Sword and Shield. Maybe because I'm bad at stamina management. But, you know, if I'm bad at managing gauges and stamina, why not just add more of those? Like the Switch Axe. It's called the Switch Axe because you switch between axe and sword mode. Initially, I had kind of a hard time dealing with the difference in mobility between the two. Axe mode is a lot more mobile than sword mode, and I kept forgetting that I was in sword mode, so I'm like, I can't move, I walk so slowly. But yeah, anyway, you got axe mode, you have sword mode. Attacking with axe mode fills up your switch gauge, which allows you to enter sword mode, and attacking with your sword allows you to fill up your amp gauge, and charging that up lets you enter your amp state, which, yeah, I think you get the idea, yeah? But anyway, if you fill all of those gauges up, you get to use the full release slash, which is a big, juicy attack that also gets hyper armor. Which means that once that animation gets going, you can pretty much just ignore the monster's attack. If it hits you, it won't send you flying. You just take a bit of chip and you can hit it with the big, juicy, full release slash. So it's super easy to get off, which also means that essentially that's what I did for the whole hunt. I just charged my gauge up and then spammed full release slash as much as I could. And it was easy to do because I couldn't get interrupted. So yeah, it did tons of damage. Super easy, S tier. That was okay. That was bad, but good enough, right? It was messy, but we'll take it. Some people might think that's a little bit cringe, right? Because it's not like full release slash is the Switch Axe's only attack. You have lots more tools like the elemental discharge, or you can even go into power axe mode that I didn't actually know about until right now. So why didn't I use them? So the thing about all these weapons in Monster Hunter is that they all play really, really differently. And unfortunately, I am stupid, which means that I had a hard time remembering which buttons to press. Sometimes wanting to do the same thing with different weapons required different inputs. So I'm using mouse and keyboard like I mentioned to perfect guard on Gunlance. I like to hit guard and right click because that also gives me a free reload. But on other weapons, I just want to hit guard. But on the Switch Axe and only in sword mode, you press guard and left click instead of right click. So sometimes I end up just pressing the wrong button on the wrong weapon and I get hit and I'm very, very sad. And also because I'm dumb. My memory is really bad, so even if there are super cool moves like zero sum, elemental discharge, or whatever, I can't remember, so I don't use them. It's a little bit of a problem. Because I've chosen to play every single weapon, I haven't really truly understood the nuances of every single weapon. But for like a relatively simple challenge like mine, it's probably okay for now. Anyway, like I said, switch axe. Tons of gauges, but maybe not enough gauges? So I fix that by playing Charge Blade, which infamously has all the gauges and all the meters. You can charge your sword, you can charge your shield, you can charge your files. I actually made Charge Blade back at the beginning of World, where it kind of played a bit similarly to Switch Axe in Wilds right now. You start by doing all your chores, you charge everything you need to charge, then you blow everything in one big huge attack. Then you do it all again. Wilds and maybe Rise changed it up a little bit by moving a lot of damage to this really cool pizza cutter mode. I think it's called Savage Axe. I don't care, pizza cutter. And I think this is the single most satisfying move in the entire game. Look! It also forces you to hold down a button to activate, so I find myself death gripping my mouse very frequently in excitement when I'm using Savage Axe mode. I also like that it's a little bit more interactive than the super amped elemental discharge that you were incentivized to spam in the past. You were just looking for big openings to use that. Now you actually get to kind of engage more with the monster's attacks with your slower pizza cutter attacks, which I find pretty fun personally. And luckily, this pizza cutting attacks are not only satisfying, they also do pretty decent damage. The pizza cutting is so satisfying. Yeah! Better! Okay, this is Charge Blade done. So I'm gonna put Charge Blade in A tier. But when it comes to satisfying attacks, there's one weapon that comes up more often than others. The Great Sword. It's a return to simplicity. No more molds, no more gauges, no more meters, just big sword and big attacks. Listen, I can see why people like it. You land a fully charged TCS and there's that big juicy hit stop and the big number and it feels so good, except I hate it. Listen, generally I do like heavier, slower, more deliberate weapons, but apparently there's a limit and the Great Sword is too slow for me and too clunky for me. Sure, the addition of Focus Mode and Wilds means I'm less likely to miss all my charged attacks, but I don't know, I just don't find it all that fun. It's not necessarily that I'm bad at it, which I am, but like not worse than the other weapons, because clearing Arkveld in under 4 minutes, despite the fact that I didn't like the weapon all that much, was relatively easy. Because when those attacks land, oh boy, do they do damage. In fact, I found myself charging up attacks I probably shouldn't have, because each attack does so much damage that there's a good chance that Arkveld just flinches and doesn't hit you with the attack it's about to hit you with. Oh! Hooray! Never punished. A tier. So, not a big fan of Big Chop, but what about Big Bonk? Hammer. My first impressions of Hammer were actually really good. There is something very charming about the simplicity of having a really huge, blunt instrument. It's a little bit faster and a little bit more responsive than the Great Sword, but at the cost of having much, much less reach. Your mobility is also better to compensate, especially with a new charge step. More importantly, there's a new move that Hammer got in Wilds, which is the new Mighty Charge Slam. After a pretty lengthy period of charging up, you get to wham! Super satisfying. But I have a big problem with it. The charge time is pretty long, and there's also a lot of conditions before you can start charging. And yes, it does a lot of damage, but it feels like a lot of the damage is just locked up in this move. By just kind of swinging your hammer normally, it doesn't really feel like you're doing all that much. Another thing that makes it really hard to use Mighty Charge is that, unlike a lot of other weapons, the hammer just doesn't really have that many defensive tools. The charge step gives you a couple of iframes, but like, that's about it. You don't have a shield or an enhanced dodge. You have to be very, very aware of where the monster's attacks are going and not just the timing of them. But it did feel like that for the same amount of damage for Hammer, it required a lot more extra work and preparation. I had to work so much harder to do the same amount of damage as other weapons. This is it, this is it, this is it! We're done! I think we're done! Less than 4 minutes, right? That felt pretty good. That felt good. Okay, okay. I think we did it. Don't say 401. Oh, what? I don't think I made it. I don't think I made it. How is a hammer? I am so bad at hammer. I hate hammer. I just don't really vibe with hammer. Oh! I did it! Maybe my build just sucks, I don't know. Maybe it's just a numbers problem, but for now, C tier. One of my issues with hammer, not enough defensive tools. What if I played a weapon with all the defensive tools? Like the longsword with like 3 different counters and these big fat iframes. Oh, and you also get huge benefits from countering as well, so you want to do it often. In previous iterations of the longsword, your goal was to upgrade your spirit gauge to red ASAP, then blow it all up by doing Helmbreaker, then do it again. But I think they made a pretty good change in Wilds, because they gave us a sweet new Crimson Slash combo when the gauge is fully upgraded. Does good damage, so there's a good reason not to Helmbreaker immediately. There's just one really big problem with it. They front-loaded so much of the damage in the first part of the combo in Crimson Slash 1. The rest of the combo isn't really worth using in comparison. So your optimal damage rotation looks like this. Yeah, it does do a truckload of damage, especially with our old friend the Corrupted Mantle. So yeah, maybe? Okay, thank God. Like, it wasn't great, but good enough, right? Arkveld just melted, A tier. And despite this silly combo, the longsword still has cool, flashy weep moments, so at least it's still fun to play. But what if it's not flashy enough? What if you want to fly? Introducing the only weapon that allows you to soar freely through the air like a bird, the Insect Glaive, except put that out of your mind immediately because, as usual, the optimal damage rotation involves your feet being firmly planted on the floor. The Insect Glaive attacks are super cool, and the commitment time is a bit longer than you might expect because each input actually makes you do a full combo attack. One of the most unique things about the Insect Glaive is the Kinsect, and this allows you to gather extracts from the monster, and after you gather them all, your combos are powered up and you can do this giant extract nuke. And this consumes all your extracts. It feels a bit similar to Switch Axe in that you do a bunch of chores for your big nuke, but the big attack is a little bit harder to execute because unlike the Switch Axe, you don't get hyper armor. And for me, that made it a lot harder. For so long, I was nowhere close to clearing Arkveld in under 4 minutes. Whenever I did my big extract nuke, halfway through I would just get knocked back, not do any damage, and lose all my extracts. And even the normal combos for Insect Glaive were hard for me to get used to because it often involved pressing and holding down a button while you pressed other buttons, and it just didn't come naturally to me. I was also really slow at the extract gathering. Unlike other weapons, instead of just hitting the monster to charge up your gauges, you had to kind of point and aim your Kinsect at a specific body part to gather a specific extract. Yeah, I sucked at this, especially because I didn't realize initially that you could upgrade your Kinsect to make it better, so that made it even harder. I struggled so much. Yay! Okay, Insect Glaive is done too! So I'm gonna have to rate Insect Glaive in C tier. Anyway, because of all the shooting and pointing, it sort of felt like I was playing a shooting game at times, so what if I just played a shooting game? Heavy Bowgun. Yeah. What are we even doing here? Listen, I get it. I made Heavy Bowgun in Worlds, but we're literally just pointing and shooting here, and occasionally using the fully auto Wyvern Heart mode to do more damage. Oh, sorry, did I say occasionally? I meant after 3 shots we're using Wyvern Heart all the time because it's the Corrupted Mantle at it again. For some reason, with this broken-ass mantle equipped, the Wyvern Heart gauge charges like pretty much immediately. There was a little bit of trickiness when it came to figuring out the optimal critical distance for shooting your pierce shots, but luckily I didn't have to shoot very much of them. Just keep shooting the Wyvern Heart. Yay! Okay, cool. Heavy Bowgun's done. Rinse and repeat, super easy. Guard when the monster attacks, A tier, easy peasy. Light Bowgun was sort of more of the same, except instead of using Wyvern Heart, you're using rapid fire mode, and instead of guarding, you're dodging and evading. Although, with the Light Bowgun, you walk so fast even while you're shooting that you can evade many attacks just by walking. Maybe some people will enjoy this playstyle, but Bowguns always felt a little uninteractive to me. And I found this even easier than Heavy Bowgun, so S tier. Isn't there a ranged weapon that feels better? Fortunately, there is. I was a little worried when I tried out bow in the beta because the existence of the tracer shot, which makes all of your attacks automatically hits. Which means that you don't even have to aim, which is half the satisfaction of ranged weapons. Fortunately, they toned down the damage of the tracer shot. It's so much weaker now, so weak that most people don't even use it. Thank goodness. So bow, I think, plays pretty similarly now to its previous iterations. You keep your bow charge up, you use your spread shots when you can, and now big iframes let you get your stamina back. But unlike previous games, the bow actually does less damage than melee weapons. In the past, this was balanced by having weaker armor, but since people don't really get expected to get hit much, it really wasn't much of a weakness. A ranged attack, even if you're using close-range spread attacks, means that your overall uptime is going to be higher than any melee weapon. So I think it sort of logically makes sense that with higher uptime, you should do a little bit less damage. Because of this really high uptime, clearing Arkveld was relatively easy. And overall, bow I found pretty satisfying to use because you do have high commitment attacks, unlike the bowguns. There are these spread attacks that are slow, so if you're not careful, you can get hit after you use it, so there's a little bit more decision-making involved. Alright, that was way too close. I'll put bow in A tier. Anyway, at this point, there's only one weapon remaining. This is actually the weapon I primarily main, so why have I left it till last? It's the hunting horn. And on the surface, that's weird. I didn't like the hammer at all. Why do I love hunting horn so much? Well, first of all, the movement speed is higher after you buff yourself with self-improvement, and the range of your weapon is also longer, and your damage isn't locked up behind a super long charge. But hunting horn is clearly the best weapon because you get to dance and doot your enemy to death, and there's something profoundly satisfying about that. I care about nothing else. But there is a problem with the hunting horn and the challenge that I'm trying to do. It's designed as a support weapon so you can support your allies with powerful buffs, which also means that as a solo weapon, it's weaker than every other weapon. There's less damage. That makes sense because you can't have strong party buffs on a weapon that does the same amount of damage because it would always be strictly better in a multiplayer setting. So I had a really hard time trying to clear Arkveld in under 4 minutes. It felt like nothing I was doing was working. So a lot of Horn's damage comes from these echo bubbles that do damage every time you attack or perform. But if the monster decides to jump somewhere, yep, that's gone. So I tried using a paralysis horn to hold him as still as possible on the bubbles, and I got pretty close to clearing it. But still, not quite. Okay, please be under 4 minutes, please, oh my gosh. So, there's been something I've been glossing over this entire video that you might have noticed. In this game, you can use different weapons and equipment and skills. If you have good skills, you will do more damage, and you'll be able to clear monsters more quickly. I've been briefly showing the builds I've been using, but like, to be honest, my builds kinda suck. They're completely suboptimal. I have 14 weapons to learn, okay? I don't have time to figure out the best and optimal skills for each weapon. They just need to be good enough. And in general, I've been using skills like Agitator, Weakness Exploit, Antivirus with Gore Pieces, Maximum Mind, and it's been good enough. But since I've been struggling so much with doing damage with a hunting horn, I had to try swapping my build around a little bit, and notably, I added Ambush, which I said I wasn't gonna do. This increases your attack by a whopping 15% after you do a sneak attack. And I was only able to clear Arkveld after I did this, so I'll have to put Hunting Horn in D tier. Yeah! Finally! I did it! And that's that. That's all the weapons. I was finally able to clear Arkveld with every single weapon in Monster Hunter Wilds. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you next time, okay? Bye-bye. So, some people might be wondering, why not tempered Arkveld? Am I scared? The main reason is that the Arkveld optional quest is predictable. Every single time it spawns in the same location, and the HP is the same every time. You can only get tempered Arkveld through investigations, and the HP and location is random every time, so it makes it hard to compare.